The massive space station loomed in the dark expanse of space, its angular structure casting a faint shadow over the surrounding nebula. It was as though the station itself was a monument to the power and arrogance of the galactic dominion, a reminder that this vast empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Within, the most influential leaders of the Dominion convened. An assembly of the most powerful alien species in the galaxy, each more technologically advanced than the next. This was where the fate of countless star systems had been decided. For generations, a place where those who dared to defy the Dominion were erased from existence, their names wiped from history. And today, the Council gathered once more. But this time, something was different. Commander Jorax, a towering reptilian, species with scales like burnished bronze and eyes that flickered with an inner fire, sat at the head of the council table. His elongated tail twitched in agitation as he stared at the hollow screen in front of him. The data was undeniable. For the past several months, reports had been pouring in from every corner of the galaxy. Whispers of a new force rising from the dust of an insignificant planet, Earth. At first, the Dominion had dismissed it as nothing more than a threat made out of desperation by a species on the brink of extinction. They were humans, after all, primitive, divided. Yet now, there were new transmissions, and this time, even the most hardened council members could feel the weight of what was being said. "We've all heard the rumors," Jorax's voice rumbled, cutting through the hum of the council chamber. His eyes narrowed, and he glanced around at the faces of his colleagues. But these warnings are no longer rumors. They are threats. At the far end of the table, Zexla, a shimmering being of pure energy, flickered with amusement. The glowing threads of its body pulsated as it hovered weightlessly in the air. Zexla's species had no physical form as others understood. It, an ethereal entity of light and thought. "You speak of threats, Commander, but from whom? Humans? A species still fumbling with their primitive spacefaring capabilities?" Zexla's voice was smooth, almost musical, dripping with condescension. "Let them bark. They can't even defend themselves from their own predators, much less pose a threat to us." Jorax's claws dug into the armrests of his chair, the tension in his posture making the air in the chamber feel charged. He had seen their transmissions, the humans' defiance, their growing power, and he knew better than anyone that this was not to be taken lightly. He had learned the hard way that underestimating an enemy often led to disaster. "I've seen the data," Jorax replied, his voice low but filled with conviction. "This isn't the same human race we've dismissed for centuries. They've built something new, something unlike anything we've faced before. A warship, a ship that can challenge us." The room fell silent as the mention of the warship hung in the air like a shadow. Zexla's light dimmed slightly, a flicker of uncertainty flashing through its form, but it quickly regained its usual brilliance. "A warship?" Zexla scoffed, its voice now tinged with an unsettling note of doubt. "And what of it? They have no fleet to speak of. We have thousands of ships, tens of thousands. A single human warship is nothing more than a passing annoyance. It'll be destroyed before it can even reach our borders." Jorax's gaze hardened, and he leaned forward. "You haven't seen what I've seen. This ship, the Atlas, it isn't like any other human vessel. It was built for one purpose: to destroy. To show the galaxy that humanity will not cower in the face of a larger power. It's capable of tearing through entire fleets, and it's coming straight for us." Zexla paused, its glowing tendrils quivering. A long moment passed before the energy being spoke again, its voice now less certain. "Then we will simply destroy it before it can reach us." Jorax shook his head. "No, you don't understand. The humans have developed something beyond our expectations. Their technology is evolving rapidly, far faster than any of us anticipated. We cannot afford to dismiss them any longer." The hollow screen flared to life, showing a transmission from the humans. It was brief, but powerful. A voice crackled through. The static, its tone calm yet imbued with an unmistakable confidence that struck a nerve deep within the council. "This is Captain Maria Daniels of the Terran warship Atlas. We've come to deliver a message. The galaxy will no longer see humanity as weak. You've had your chance to respect us, to hear our warnings. Now you'll hear them loud and clear. Surrender. or face annihilation. The transmission ended, and for the first time in centuries, the council was silent. Jorahx leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. The Dominion's military might, its vast fleets, its cutting-edge technology, all of it was in jeopardy. And it was not just the Atlas that concerned him. No, humanity's true weapon was something far more dangerous. Their will. The will to survive. The will to fight. It was something the Dominion had never had to contend with before, not to this degree. Zexala's body flickered once more, its thoughts seemingly processing this new information. So, what now? It asked, its voice quieter now, no longer mocking. Jorahx turned his gaze to the rest of the council, his voice cold and resolute. We prepare for war. We underestimate them no longer. The humans are coming, and if we don't stop them now, they will change the balance of power in this galaxy forever. The council members nodded in unison, the weight of the situation pressing down upon them. They had always considered humanity to be a footnote in the galaxy's history, a species whose time would never come. But that time had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. Before the council could continue its deliberations, the holoscreen blinked again. This time, it wasn't a warning from the humans. It was a declaration. Attention, Dominion. Fleet, this is Captain Maria Daniels, and I'm giving you one last chance to turn back. If you don't, your fleet will be obliterated. The choice is yours. The transmission ended, leaving the council with no illusions. There was no more time for debate. The humans had spoken, and they had made it clear that the galaxy would be forced to reckon with them. Before we jump into this epic tale, subscribe to HFY Chronicles for the most intense sci-fi battles, legendary warriors, and universe-shaking wars. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and join the fight. The Dominion's response was swift, calculated, and relentless. Across the galaxy, the largest fleet ever assembled in the history of the Empire began to move. The fleet, an armada of hundreds of warships, from the massive dreadnoughts to the nimble strike-class cruisers, began its journey toward Earth. At the helm of this formidable force was High Commander Zalthor, a being of terrifying intellect and unmatched strategic prowess. His species, the Tsarkar, were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to outthink their enemies before a single shot was fired. But even Zalthor, in all his brilliance, could not have anticipated the storm that was about to hit. Back on Earth, Captain Maria Daniels stood before the holographic projection of her crew, her gaze unwavering as she surveyed the faces of the men and women who had chosen to follow her into the unknown. The Atlas, a warship unlike any other, was ready, its weapons charged, its engines primed, and its systems honed for battle. But it wasn't just the ship that made the Atlas so formidable. It was the crew. They were humanity's last line of defense, their collective will to survive the only thing that could stand against the vast might of the Dominion. Maria was not a born leader. She had earned her place through sheer will and determination, climbing the ranks of a human military force that had once been considered insignificant by the galaxy's standards. She had seen the rise of humanity from the ashes of their fractured world to the moment they became a spacefaring species. But none of that would matter if she and her crew couldn't hold their ground against the might of the Dominion. And she knew the stakes. Failure meant not just the loss of Earth, but the end of humanity's existence in this galaxy. "We can do this," Maria said, her voice steady despite the chaos brewing outside the ship. "We've been trained for this. This isn't just about fighting. It's about showing them that we're not to be ignored anymore. We're not their prey, and we never will be again. This warship, this Atlas, isn't just a machine. It's a symbol of everything humanity has fought for. Everything we've built. Everything we stand for." The crew nodded in silent agreement, their faces a mix of determination and quiet resolve. Maria could see it in their eyes, the same fire that had burned in her own when she first took command. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was a battle for their very place in the galaxy. As the Atlas shot out of Earth's atmosphere, the crew felt a sudden weightlessness, both physically and emotionally. They were no longer just humans on a fragile planet. They were part of something larger, something unstoppable. The ship's advanced artificial intelligence, Aura, engaged, its soft, synthetic voice resonating in their minds. Captain Daniels, all systems are online. We are ready for deployment. The Dominion fleet is 14.8 light-years away and closing at full speed. Maria looked out of the bridge's forward viewport, where the endless void of space stretched out before them. Every star seemed to burn brighter now, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for the clash that was about to unfold. "Plot a course for the heart of their fleet," Maria commanded, her voice calm yet laced with the intensity of the moment. "Let them come. We'll show them just how wrong they are about us." Aura processed the command. The ship's trajectory, plotted with pinpoint accuracy. The Atlas was not the largest ship in the fleet, but its design was something of a marvel. It was built for speed, precision, and devastating firepower. The Atlas's outer hull shimmered with an advanced nanomaterial that could absorb and deflect energy blasts, while its internal systems were designed to adapt and counter any Dominion strategy. The ship's weapons, plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and the experimental dark matter rifle, were capable of destroying entire fleets with a single strike. As the ship tore through the darkness of space, the crew prepared themselves for the inevitable confrontation. Weapons were armed, shields were raised, and every member of the crew knew that this battle would decide the fate of humanity. There would be no turning back once they crossed into Dominion space. The Atlas would either make its mark on the galaxy, or it would burn out like so many human dreams before it. Back within the Dominion's fleet, High Commander Zalthor paced in his flagship, the Zelkor, a dreadnought that was a fortress unto itself. Its hull was adorned with ancient symbols of power, and its weapons could shatter moons. Yet, despite its size and might, the Tsarkar commander felt a growing unease. He had dismissed the humans for years, but now, as he watched the Atlas's trajectory, on his monitors he could not ignore the rising threat. Something about this warship, the humanity behind it, had unsettled him. "Prepare the fleet," Zalthor commanded, his deep voice cutting through the silence of his command center. "We'll annihilate them before they even reach us. Let them feel the full weight of the Dominion." But even as the fleet mobilized, Zalthor couldn't shake the feeling that this battle would not be like any other. There was something different about this human ship, something he couldn't quite understand. The report spoke of a weapon unlike anything the Dominion had ever faced, something that could tear apart fleets with ease. If the Atlas lived up to the rumors, the Dominion's superiority would be tested in ways they never thought possible. In the cold, dark void of space, the two forces would soon collide. The humans, unproven but full of fire, and the Dominion, overconfident but rattled by the unknown. And as the Atlas hurtled toward the heart of the Dominion fleet, the battle for the galaxy's future began in earnest. The tension in the air was palpable. Each crew member knew that they were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the right to exist, to prove to the galaxy that humanity was not a footnote in history, but a force to be reckoned with. And as the Atlas closed in on the Dominion fleet, Maria Daniels could feel the weight of that responsibility on her shoulders. This was no longer just about a warship. It was about everything humanity had fought for. Their survival, their future, and their place in the stars. As the enemy fleet loomed larger, Maria's heart raced, and her thoughts raced faster. "Let them come," she whispered under her breath. "We're ready." The darkness of space gave way to an explosion of activity as the Atlas approached the heart of the Dominion fleet. The void, once silent and calm, now thrummed with energy as ships from both sides began to close in on one another. On the bridge of the Atlas, Captain Maria Daniels stood with her hands firmly gripped on the control panel, her sharp eyes scanning the tactical holograms that flickered in the air around her. Every decision she made in the coming moments would alter the fate of humanity. "All stations, report!" she commanded, her voice steady but laced with tension. The crew moved swiftly, relaying their data without hesitation. "Aft shields at full power, Captain. Forward plasma cannons charging," Lieutenant Cale reported from his station, his face a mask of focus. "Quantum torpedoes primed, Captain," Ensign Rhiannon added, her fingers dancing across her console as she prepared the ship's most devastating weapon. The Atlas was now on a direct course with the Dominion's flagship, the Zelkor. It was a monstrous vessel, a testament to the sheer scale and firepower the Dominion could muster. At over 4 kilometers in length, its dark, angular hull was scarred with the markings of 1,000 battles, the design purposeful and terrifying. From the gleaming energy cannons mounted on its massive turrets to the ominous glow of its warp drive systems, the Zelkor was the very embodiment of the Dominion's superiority complex. But even as it loomed large on their scanners, the crew of the Atlas did not flinch. Maria's voice cut through the noise, pulling everyone back to their tasks. "All crew, stay focused. We've trained for this. The Dominion might have the numbers, but we have something they don't. We have the will to fight. We have the will to survive." The tension on the bridge was palpable. Outside, the stars seemed to fade as the two fleets grew closer. It was as if the universe itself was holding its breath. And then, without warning, the silence shattered. The first volley of fire came from the Zelkor. Brilliant flashes of energy streaked through the blackness, tearing into the fabric of space itself. The Dominion's weapons were powerful, their beams of energy designed to vaporize anything in their path. But the Atlas had been built for this moment. With a sharp, precise maneuver, Maria ordered the ship to perform a hard roll, dodging the first few blasts. The ship's advanced shields flared as they absorbed the incoming fire, their surface shimmering with the impact. The Atlas trembled, under the sheer force, but it held strong. "Shields at 85%, Captain," Ensign Rhiannon called out, her fingers racing across the console to adjust their trajectory. "We're holding, but we can't take much more of this." "Give them everything we've got," Maria snapped. "Bring the Zelkor into our range. Let's show them what a human warship can do." The Atlas responded with deadly precision. Its plasma cannons unleashed a barrage of fiery red energy, their pulses slamming into the side of the Zelkor. The Dominion flagship's shields flickered and sparked, the energy blasts sending tremors through its hull. But the Zelkor was far from defeated. It retaliated instantly, its massive energy cannons charging again. Maria watched as the weapons on the Zelkor fired once more, beams of pure destruction tearing through the space between them. "Brace for impact," Maria ordered, her knuckles turning white on the control panel. The Atlas lurched as one of the Dominion beams struck its left side, sending shockwaves through the ship. For a moment, everything went still. The hum of the ship's engines seemed to fade, and all that could be heard was the labored breathing of the crew. Then, the emergency alarms blared, snapping everyone back to attention. "Report!" Maria barked, her voice sharp. "Damaged hull breach on Deck 7, Captain," Lieutenant Kyle reported quickly. "We've lost containment on the port side. Fire's spreading." "Divert power to the damaged systems," Maria commanded, her eyes never leaving the unfolding battle. "Seal off the breach and prepare to engage the secondary cannons. We're not letting them push us back." The crew scrambled, working in unison to manage the damage. But even with the Atlas's superior engineering and the crew's expertise, the battle was escalating beyond their expectations. The Dominion fleet, now joined by dozens of support ships, began to press the attack. The Zelkor's firepower was overwhelming, but the Atlas was not the only weapon humanity had to offer. High Commander Zalthor watched the conflict unfold with a detached calmness from his flagship. His confidence was unshakable. He had seen battles won with far fewer resources. But as the Zelkor took damage, and the Atlas continued to dodge and retaliate with ruthless efficiency, doubt began to creep into his mind. The humans, despite their primitive origins, were fighting with an intensity he had not anticipated. "They're more than we thought," Zalthor muttered to his second-in-command, Commander Vithran, who stood silently at his side. "This Atlas, it's no ordinary ship. It's a symbol of something larger. Something we didn't count on." Vithran turned to Zalthor, his brow furrowed in thought. "Perhaps we underestimated them, Commander. The humans, they have an instinct to survive. It's unlike anything we've encountered." Zalthor's sharp gaze narrowed as he studied the human warship. He had no intention of backing down, but the resilience of the Atlas, and the humans aboard it, was undeniable. He had faced thousands of battles, but never one like this. The human capacity for resourcefulness, for survival, was something that could not be easily defeated. "Deploy the Harbingers," Zalthor ordered, his voice cold. "We'll break them, or die trying." Far below, on the Atlas, Maria Daniels and her crew were locked in a deadly dance with the Dominion's might. The Zelkor had taken damage, but so had they. The Atlas was battered, its systems failing in places, but the crew's spirit remained unbroken. As the Harbingers, elite fighters of the Dominion, began to deploy from the Zelkor, Maria's eyes hardened with determination. "Hold steady, everyone," she said, her voice low but fierce. "This is only the beginning." The Atlas shuddered as the Dominion's fighter crafts poured into the void, their sleek, deadly forms darting through space. They were faster, more agile, but the Atlas was not alone in this battle. With the crew's grit and humanity's unwavering resolve, the true fight was just beginning, and they would not back down. The moment the Harbingers launched, the entire character of the battlefield transformed. No longer was it just a clash of titanic vessels exchanging raw firepower. It became a ballet of chaos. The Dominion's elite fighter pilots moved with surgical precision, weaving through flak and debris with almost predatory instinct. These were not ordinary pilots, genetically enhanced and mentally tethered to their craft through neural uplinks. They fought as extensions of their warships, executing maneuvers that would break the bones and minds of lesser species. Each Harbinger craft was equipped with phase displacement thrusters, allowing them to flicker through micro-dimensions for fractions of a second, rendering them nearly impossible to hit using conventional targeting systems. But the Atlas was not built on convention. Deep within its command, algorithms lay an adaptive AI known as Argus, one of the few remaining AIs sanctioned for battlefield operations under Earth's War Codex. While the Dominion believed artificial intelligence was only a tool for optimization, humanity had turned it into something else, an ally, a strategist, almost a sentient general. Argus didn't merely track the Harbingers, it predicted them. Each flicker, every dimensional skip, was recorded and modeled in real time, feeding a predictive targeting system that could anticipate their next move by analyzing the microscopic shifts in quantum field patterns. Argus, redirect fire to the outer perimeter. "Prioritize erratic vectors," Captain Maria ordered, eyes locked on the tactical feed now swarming with enemy icons. "Cut them off before they reach our main turrets." "Affirmative," the AI's voice responded, calm and emotionless, yet somehow reassuring. Projected interception paths recalculated. Deploying interceptor drones Theta through Omega. From the underbelly of the Atlas, dozens of drone hatches burst open, releasing a storm of automated defense units. These were humanity's answer to the Harbingers, compact, nimble, and independently intelligent. Each drone was equipped with adaptive shielding and magneto-rail cannons calibrated to fire in zero-delay bursts. The first wave clashed with the Dominion fighters in a dazzling spectacle of light and energy. Explosions peppered the darkness like fireworks, the shockwaves rippling through the void like underwater echoes. Maria's hands gripped the control panel as the ship continued to vibrate with each impact. Her crew was stretched thin, juggling ship-wide damage control, navigation through a storm of kinetic fire, and maintaining offensive pressure on the Zelkor. Below deck, engineers and medics worked side by side, dragging wounded crew members from collapsed bulkheads and rushing to stabilize systems teetering on failure. Sparks rained down from exposed conduits, while emergency lighting flickered in blood-red hues. "We've got fires in reactor junctions 5 through 8, shouted Chief Engineer Thorne over the comms, his voice hoarse from smoke and exhaustion. "If we lose cooling in Sector 7, we'll be venting plasma into the bridge." "Seal it off and reroute power through the auxiliary nodes," Maria barked back. "We need to hold for 5 more minutes. Just 5. But 5 minutes in, battle felt like 5 lifetimes. The Zelkor had begun to reposition, its dorsal cannons swiveling to focus on the Atlas. The Dominion was no longer testing them, they were trying to eliminate them entirely. Massive lances of energy ripped across space, narrowly missing the Atlas as it performed a desperate barrel roll. Hull plating screamed in protest, entire sections of armor torn away in sheets. The stars outside shimmered behind a haze of fire and metal. "Shield integrity down to 41%, Rhiannon reported, her voice frayed by tension. "We're not going to last much longer." "Then we hit them harder," Maria said, a quiet fury rising in her tone. She wasn't just commanding a ship, she was carrying the weight of every human colony, every family, every dream Earth had ever launched into the stars. "Argus, initiate judgment protocol. Fire the quantum torpedoes." The AI paused. Only a moment. Judgment protocol confirmed. Charging quantum payload. The quantum torpedoes were unlike anything the Dominion had seen before. While they had harnessed brute force and elegant war machines, humanity had turned to the unpredictability of quantum instability as a weapon. Each torpedo contained an artificially collapsed singularity, wrapped in layers of exotic matter and gravitational shear fields. When detonated, they didn't explode in the traditional sense. They ruptured space-time itself. For a few terrifying moments, local reality would twist, fragment, and collapse before rebounding into coherence, obliterating anything caught within. As the first torpedo launched, even the harbingers faltered. The Dominion pilots had encountered plasma, lasers, and mass drivers. But this was something far more primal. The torpedo streaked forward, trailing a ribbon of distorted light. Upon impact with the Zelkor's forward shield array, it didn't detonate. It unraveled. Space folded inward with a sickening ripple. The shields buckled. And for one impossible moment, the Dominion flagship bent unnaturally, like a ship glimpsed through a funhouse mirror. Then came the explosion. Not light, not fire. Something deeper. A gravitational shockwave rippled outward, tearing Dominion fighters from their trajectories, shredding support vessels like paper in a storm. Even the Atlas groaned under the pressure, hull plating flexing against the force. And when the distortion faded, the Zelkor's bow was gone. Simply gone. Silence followed. A stunned, haunting silence. For the first time, the Dominion's unstoppable flagship appeared vulnerable. Bleeding atmosphere. Flickering. And in that moment, across the battlefield, something shifted. The psychological tide had turned. But Maria knew better than to celebrate early. Damage report. She ordered, voice cold and measured. Multiple systems offline, Kale responded. Our main railguns are out. Torpedo tubes 1 and 3 are damaged, and we've got breaches on decks 2, 5, and 12. But Captain, we hurt them. We really hurt them. Maria nodded slowly. Then we're not done yet. Prepare for the next wave. We hold this line. We don't retreat. Not now. Outside the viewport, the remaining Dominion ships reorganized, hesitant but not broken. They had lost the element of terror. But they still outnumbered the Atlas by hundreds. The battle was far from over, and humanity had just begun to fight. The Dominion was wounded, but not defeated. And like any wounded predator, it was now far more dangerous. The remaining fleets regrouped with a grim purpose, encircling the Atlas in a tightening noose. What had once been a display of overwhelming force had become a bitter contest of attrition. The pride of the Dominion, the Zelkor, floated half-shattered, bleeding superheated gas and venting ionized plasma into the void. But its core systems were still operational, and its vengeance had only just begun. Inside the Atlas, the atmosphere had changed. There was no cheering, no elation, only the cold, coiled awareness of survival's fleeting grip. Every console was lit in red, every sensor scanning, every crew member functioning at the limit of human endurance. And Captain Maria Cade stood at the heart of it, her expression unreadable, her thoughts faster than the blinking lights that surrounded her. She wasn't fighting for glory. She was orchestrating humanity's last stand. Each breath calculated, each order a thread in a fragile web of strategy and defiance. The Dominion launched a second wave, not of harbingers this time, but of devourers. These were not fighters, but biomechanical siege weapons, dark things born in zero-gravity labs, bred for destruction. They latched onto enemy hulls like parasites, drilling through armor with nanoplasmic acid and vomiting corrosive enzymes into vital systems. Half machine, half organism. They were grotesque mockeries of engineering and evolution, and they were heading straight for the Atlas. They've adapted, Lieutenant Kale muttered, staring at the tactical feed as it filled with writhing red icons. They're not going to give us space to breathe. They're coming to tear us apart from the inside. Maria leaned forward. Then we give them no purchase. All anti-personnel systems to automated control. Activate sentry countermeasures. Rhiannon, deploy flares and jammers. Blind them. If they want to crawl inside my ship, they'll have to do it in the dark. The Atlas responded with cold efficiency. Dozens of automated hatches sprang open, releasing swarms of micro-turrets and anti-boarding drones, each equipped with ultraviolet scanners and burst EMP emitters. As the Devourers latched onto the hull, they were met with a wall of resistance. The exterior of the Atlas came alive with fire and static, like a living organism rejecting infection. Explosions lit the starfield as drones swarmed the creatures, targeting their exposed neural nodes, disrupting their semi-organic control matrices. But some made it through. Alarms screamed as breaches lit up the internal sensors. In the medical bay, injured crew had to be dragged away from gurneys as the ceiling buckled, split, and from it descended one of the monstrosities. Chitinous, skeletal, a maze of pulsing veins over a core of grinding metal. It hissed in no language, but the malice was palpable. Security teams arrived within seconds, pulse rifles barking, but even as they destroyed the creature, 2 more emerged in its place. The Atlas was under siege from within and without, and still, Maria did not waver. Seal non-essential compartments. Collapse the decks if we have to. Argus, reroute internal drones. Engage all levels of internal defense protocol. I want those things burned out of my ship. Argus responded instantly. The ship's AI unleashed its full wrath. Hallways ignited with incineration fields. Anti-grav pulses slammed into invading Devourers, pinning them to ceilings where auto-turrets dismembered them in mechanical fury. Every inch of the Atlas was now a battlefield, and then came a sound no one had expected. A message. Not a coded threat or an alien frequency, but a voice. Human. Channeled across the void from the shattered bridge of the Zelkor. It was him. Captain Cade. The voice rasped, distorted, regal even through the static. You are not like the others. Humanity was always thought to be impulsive, loud, crude. But you have built something exquisite. Maria's eyes narrowed. She didn't reply. I watched your ancestors burn their own skies. I watched them crawl through war and plague and madness. And yet here you are, standing against an empire carved over 10,000 star cycles. A single ship. One flame. Holding back the night. Still, Maria said nothing. But her crew listened, silent, unsettled. Join us, the voice said. Not as slaves, not as conquered, but as evolved, as rulers. The Dominion can be your cradle, Captain. You need only let go of the dying Earth you carry on your shoulders. And finally, she spoke. You think I carry Earth? You think that's what this is? Maria stood slowly, her voice clear, her presence commanding. We don't carry Earth. Earth carries us. Every grain of sand, every ruin, every poem, every rebellion, it's carved into our bones. You watched us crawl, bleed, destroy ourselves. But what you never understood is that we learned. We evolved the hard way. She stepped toward the center of the bridge, eyes locked on the image of the Dominion commander flickering across the screen. You built an empire on obedience. We built ours on defiance. You forge unity through domination. We find strength in chaos. You feared extinction. We survived it. The screen crackled. For a moment, silence. Then the Dominion transmission cut. Rhiannon turned, her voice hushed. I think you just made their decision for them. Maria smiled faintly. Good. I was tired of pretending there was a choice. Outside, the Zelkor began to charge its superweapon. A gravitational arc array that could bend space like liquid and turn a planet to ash. But the Atlas was already moving, its engines flaring with desperate power. This was no longer a battle. This was a reckoning. One ship, scarred and staggering, was going to hurl itself against a god and try to kill it. The next few minutes would decide the fate of not just a battle, not just a crew, but of humanity's place among the stars. And Atlas wasn't finished yet.